podcast that floats down here.
Hi, I'm Melissa, your Stephen King veteran.
Hi, I'm Ben, the Stephen King and horror film fanboy.
And hello, I'm Luke, your first time Stephen King reader.
Hi, we're here. Welcome back. We are here talking about a book. I have it. We're talking about this book, Revival by Stephen King, which is fantastic. And of course, since my computer all shut down, all of my documents shut down as well. So here we go. This book was published in, hold on. I'm almost there. Here we go. 2014. It is 405 pages long. I actually did not type the dedication because it was very long and impressive, to be honest. It was a very good dedication, so I figured I'd just read it. This book is for some of the people who built my house: Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker, H.P. Lovecraft, Clark Ashton Smith, Donald Wandry, Fritz Leiber, August Derleth, Shirley Jackson, Robert Bloch, Peter Straub, and Arthur Machen, whose short novel, The Great God Pan, has haunted me all my life. Fabulous book dedication.
That is surprising it took this long for him to acknowledge them, like those authors, in like a dedication form.
I agree with you, but I think this is such a classic Stephen King type book that it's appropriate here.
Yes.
Because you can see a lot of this in this novel. Anyway, Ben and Luke are here, and my son who wants to yell at me, so I'm going to go on mute while I say hi to him because he just got back from football practice. Hi, Ben and Luke.
Hey.
Hey, howdy.
Yeah, man. No, it's. I think that dedication itself, I would say it makes sense. This is the most deeply inspired by Lovecraft, or I was thinking Mary Shelley the whole time, and several other classic horror, authors from way back. But this was, compared to many of the other books that we've read, more classic horror than I ever thought. It felt more classic Stephen King. It felt like not Stephen King to me. It felt like he was doing his version of Mary Shelley.
Yeah, that's completely fair, because I'm used to, yes, the Stephen King we've come to know and love, the very mystical, magical kind of, and this is scientific, scary. And so yeah, you're right. This doesn't seem like a straight on Stephen King novel, but I think that's a new theme that we're running into just from like last book to this book, where he's taken stuff he's never really touched before and trying to make his own.
I would say the last
wave into
this year of books so far has been like, oh, this is going to be King dabbling his hand at this type of book. He's going to do one of these. He's going to tackle this. And he's capable of all of them, which is what he's showing off. But it's hard for me to really even say what classic Stephen King is anymore. It's so different than what it was from all the books that we read last year and the 3 years before that. But, it just has such a different feel once it's gotten into, I'd say, like the 2000s King as opposed to previous. So it's almost like different versions of him that we've gotten.
I'm going to read the back cover synopsis, and then basically I'm going to talk about how this is that you are both right, because new King is not real King and this is real King. That's all. Okay, back cover synopsis. The new minister came to Harlow, Maine when Jamie Morton was a boy doing battle with his toy army men on the front lawn. The young Reverend Charles Jacobs and his beautiful wife brought new life to the local church and captivated their congregation. But with Jamie, he shares a secret obsession, a draw so powerful it would have profound consequences 5 decades after the shattering tragedy that turned the preacher against God, and long after his final scathing sermon. Now Jamie, a nomadic rock guitarist hooked on heroin, meets Charles Jacobs again. And when their bond becomes a pact beyond even the devil's devising, Jamie discovers that revival has many meanings.
Yeah,
Pretty accurate.
I'd say
Yeah.
so. I'd say it's one of the better ones, and
Mhm,
it gives you enough to be interested, and it also feels fairly comprehensive on what's going to be happening in the story. I'd say.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump into our three big thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts. Usually I don't have this, but I don't think a lot, but apparently I've thought a lot today. And I just want to start by saying Stephen King spoiled the whole book on page 42. So on
Yeah.
page 42, he says, let's see if I can find it. I wrote it in here. So Charlie's talking to the 9-year-old Jamie. So this is 3 years after he comes, right? And this is so he says people will ignore electricity kind of like ignoring the elephant in the room, right? Because electricity is just kind of a given. And Jamie replies, except when you have to clean up the poop, which is a funny 9-year-old line. Except to me, that is the entire plot of this book, is Jacob's trying to harness the elephant and Jamie trying to just clean up all the shit after it.
To some
That's all.
extent, yeah, I'd say so. I mean, like he spoils things more so than that in other books, but I think that's a very
Yeah.
succinct, overarching. Here's the story in a nutshell.
It's one of those,
And-
have you ever seen those memes where it's like, Spider-Man, but without context? And then there's like 4 pictures and it tells the story of Spider-Man with random pictures. So that if you've seen the movie, you like, oh yeah, that's this part. But if you haven't seen the movie, you're like, why is there a donkey on a surfboard or
Mhm.
whatever it is? That's what that felt like to me. So the first time through, no big
Yeah.
deal. Second time through, I'm like, hey, look, plot, the whole thing.
See, and here's the thing. I will take those spoilers. It's more of a
Yeah.
hint. It's more of a nugget or the Easter egg kind of thing. Look for
Yeah.
this over, and but unfortunately, Sarah wouldn't make it till tomorrow.
And he never saw her again.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I will take because I did both times through, didn't register one lick to me that line
Mhm.
until I saw your note. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. But I also don't deep dive into most things I hear.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
a spoiler in the least. It's foreshadowing.
I
is
like
really
the
what it is.
Foreshadow.
Easter
That's
egg.
it. Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're
Yeah.
not going to catch it the first time, but the second time through, you're like, oh.
I just caught it as a funny line. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, that's
right.
that's a funny thing. But then, yeah, I saw your note. And I said, yeah, that's pretty good. That makes a lot of sense.
So my first big thought on this one is this is a coming of ages story, is the best way to put it. You have for different areas of life that Jamie and Charles go through and everything. But what I found funny is this is basically a combo of Joyland, Doom McKee, a sprinkling of Mr. Mercedes, and a bit of Pet Cemetery thrown in at the end. You can pick stuff from all those books that, and granted, he references at least, a little bit of Joyland in it, but yeah, more than a little bit, like terminology that was used, but like Doom McKee and Mr. Mercedes more so for getting the old man sell a little bit. Yeah, a touch of sell as well. You're right. But like it's basically the reason I went with those two is because you're getting the older man, Mr. Mercedes, really, because you get the old man with the younger girlfriend, like because you can tell King, who's now in his 70s, 60s or 70s, is like, I can get that 20-something-year-old. I could get that, thinking back when he was 50, I can get that, 20-something-year-old. Or now he's 70, Mr. Mercedes. I can get that 40-year-old. And that's his little way of, doing that kind of stuff. But I thought it was very interesting. Like first time through, I'm like, what the hell? We just skipped 3 years for no reason. And then we skipped 30 years, 25 years kind of thing. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? It was very disorienting the first couple chapters, like until you got figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way the whole book is set up, there's several parts, and the chapters are actually quite long. Like, and each time they start a new chapter, it says like, oh, here's like 5 keywords of what's going to happen in this chapter, and it's almost like whenever I was going through it, the first kind of part is young Jamie, 6 years old, 9 years old, and learning about his family and the coming of Charles Jacobs and all that. But that felt more I don't know, classic 60s kind of movie feel to it with just kid and family and stuff happens, which was fine. And then you move into the second part, which is musician, learning how to be a musician and joining a band. The Dazed and Confused portion of the story is what I would call it. And it's learning about falling in with maybe not the wrong crowd, but maybe a crowd that leads you to other crowds that might get worse for you, which is basically what he turns into. And then we have the falling out of the Dazed and Confused portion where he's a heroin addict and is getting kicked out of bands because he can't keep up with them. And yeah, I mean, I'd say those are like the first three overall parts. And then from there, we kind of go with restoring himself, Jamie, and then kind of being pulled into the murky mire of what Charles Jacobs has been trying to do his whole life, this huge experiment thing. So just as a overall fabric, that's how I look at the book, is those 5 sections.
So kind of thinking on that, I really like that at the beginning of chapter 5, he talks about it. Have you ever noticed that the openings of each chapter are sort of this like big overall thinking thing, and then we get into the actual plot? And this one is where he really talks about how he loves movies, right? He's always loved going to movies. And the thing that he likes about movies, or something he notices, is how time passes so quickly, right? You've got 2.5 hours to tell a story of 10 years. And so it's like, this happens, bam, 10 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this line in this book, and this ties into kind of one of my points later, to be honest, but it's that idea that, Benj, I know you said like, bam, time jump, bam, time jump. But he said, where did he put this? Oh, I can't find the line. But basically it was like, you are getting the time dissolve. In the story that you're hearing, you're getting the time dissolve. But I lived every one of those days in between.
Mm-hmm.
So it acknowledges it in a way that it's like, I get it. You're hearing a story, but I promise you, I lived each one of those hard days. And to me, that validates him as a narrator a bit. The idea that I get that this is going to seem simple to you. Oh, yeah. And then we had 14 years and we were cool. No, really, I lived 14 years of hell, right? Or good days and bad days. But like, you don't need to know about those for this story.
Mm-hmm.
But just know I know they were there.
Right.
I know,
it's not a story
that.
about my life. It's a story about this overall thread that's been here my whole life.
And so, quick side note: at jumping completely to the end of the book, not going to get into spoilers just yet. But he does make a comment of, you can go online, you can Google Pastor Danny. Go ahead, do it right now. You'll see what comes up. And sure as shit, there's a guy named Pastor Danny with motivational speeches on there and such that I just pulled up. I don't think it's anything related, but it's quite literally, there is a Pastor Danny that you can find. It's like, okay,
I did it
that's
too.
catchy.
There were several. It was several different Pastor Dannys, and I was like, nah, not as cool.
Fair, yeah. I just like it said, just pull up the Google thing. It was like, and so like I like how he like it makes you almost feel like it's a natural, thing. And he just because firsthand knowledge from where we live, since there was a kid mentioned from St. Louis area, he went out of his way to get the call letters for the television station
KSDK,
correct.
Yeah.
KSDK.
Yeah.
And I will give him. Yeah, I will give him credit for
Did
that.
you? So
And
I was
in the correct children's hospital too.
yes,
Yes.
St. Louis Children's Hospital. So that was going to be my question. Did either of you take the time to look up if the mental hospital or the town where the mental hospital was were real places?
I did.
Well,
not.
Oakville is a real town in
Yes.
St. Louis
St. Louis
community.
Yeah.
In St. Louis County. I don't know if there's a mental hospital in
I don't remember what the name of it was. I didn't look it up.
It was Oakville Mental.
Gad.
I
Yeah, I don't know, but
yeah. So he got the name of the town, like a name of the city, right? In it.
that one I knew. It was the name of the hospital.
Gotcha.
There. I'm a big fan. King, can you put more things in St. Louis? Like you've done
Right.
a lot in Colorado. We had more Colorado. We had more Maine. I get it. Come hang out here for like a year and write a story about, I don't know, North St. Louis or something. That'd be great too. Okay.
Oh, there's plenty.
Chrome Roses is a kick-ass band name. I agree completely. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of the other band names were really dumb,
Oh
but
yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of band names are really
They're
dumb.
what you hear of with young kid
Yes.
band names. There were a lot of dumb ones.
And I love that he remembered. So I played with this guy named Jay. So first we were the J Tones, and then we were Jay and the Tones, and then we were Jay and the whatever. And he's like, I don't care. I just want to play.
Mhm.
I can show up. I'm not great, but I'm like, I can hack it.
Right.
So
And yeah, I loved his description of, well, first of all, the kid when he was a kid learning guitar and that instance, but then his growing up where he's like, I'm not the greatest guitarist in the world, and coming from a guy who's a rhythm guitar player, it really spoke to me because yep, as long as you know these, let's say 6 chords, you can play in any cover band, as a rhythm guitar player. If you can count to 4 and play these 6 chords, you're fine.
all that shit starts with E.
Yep.
I love
Exactly.
that line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
I thought that guitar playing stuff was really cool because we all know that Stephen King does play guitar some, and I felt like he was describing himself in there. He's like,
Mhm.
I'm not great, but I can get on stage and play a little bit. Like I'm not going to blow anybody away, but when Eric Clapton pulls me up on stage to play with him, I'm going to go ahead and play with him because it's Eric fucking Clapton. And guess what? I'm not going to embarrass myself. I'm not going to blow anybody away. But that's how it just felt like Jamie's character was. And about the playing itself, he's like, I just want to do it. I just want to do it. I'm
Yeah.
not going to be a phenomenal, but
I love that you brought up the fact that King plays guitar and it's one of those, because that goes really well with one of my side notes because I have more than 3. So a lot of the time in these books, we have, oh, the comic book artist, or oh, the author, or oh, the author, or oh, the guy who writes manuals.
or the painter.
Right. So I was like, oh, we got a musician this time. And I was like, so how similar do you think that is to this like author? And then yeah, Stephen King plays guitar. Nope. Still writing himself. Like
oh yeah.
he's
King plays
good.
rhythm guitar too, because he mentioned that in one of the afterwards. He was talking about playing guitar on something with it. And he's like, I can play rhythm guitar, and they asked me to do the Hey Ho's.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I remember him saying that. And
Oh, so yeah. But I liked Jamie a lot. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
So-
thought even when go ahead, Bench. Go ahead.
no. I was kind of gonna jump. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna on Jamie. I thought seeing his tailspin into his addictions and things felt natural. It just seemed like it was really well written, as someone who was writing this, as someone who did run into some of that in his life, struggling with his own demons and things. And I don't know, I just thought it all made sense as to how Jamie got there and the lifestyle he was living. And it felt similar to a couple different characters, primarily Dr. Sleep is what it felt like to me at the beginning when he's stealing money from the lady that he spent the night with. It just kind of felt like he was in that same kind of downward area of his life. And this is where we get the reintroduction of Charles Jacobs for the first time, and he pulls him out and basically heals him of his addiction, which was a pretty impressive bit of tech, is what I'll say.
Yeah. And going into the addiction thing, I'm glad that King went the route that he did for the reason for his addiction, because again, several friends in in music and such, I've seen some fall down that rabbit hole, and it's not because they get on painkillers, it's because they're looking for that next rush, next thing, and that's how they fall into it. I'm glad that Jamie as a character fell into it by the happenstance that a lot of times it happens, to a lot of people who are in that situation, get on heroin and that thing because they start off on morphine, then they go to codone and everything, and they need that fix, and it's more of a medical thing than a high thing. And I'm glad that was Jamie in that sense, apart from just being a junkie. There's a difference, and I'm not trying to you know,
No, I agree with you because it would have been almost a stereotype to have a
Right.
musician who happens to be a druggie because he's
Right.
been around drugs the whole
Mhm.
time.
yeah,
Like I get that. I think if it had been not a musician and he had just fallen in with the wrong crowd or whatever, that's one thing. But I mean, here's a dude who was just a dude who played music, who was around that, and then once he got into it, could find it really easily, but didn't get into it because he was around it, right?
exactly.
And I think there are a lot more musicians like that than there are musicians who are the druggy musicians
Yes.
because they've lived
Yeah.
longer and made it that far. I don't know, but I don't know. I agree with you.
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely agree as well.
So can I talk about Jamie really quick, and then maybe we can get into plot stuff?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Jamie might be my favorite first-person character narrator, besides Dolores Claiborne. Caveat: she was better, but her story was not necessarily a first person in the terms of just written from the perspective. She was having a conversation with somebody, and we only got her side of the dialogue, so that was slightly different. I'm just clarifying, but she was obviously better. Here's why I like Jamie, and I made it really small so I could read it, so that's a problem. Here we go. So he purposefully tells his story as truthfully as he can, right? Even to his own detriment. He also acknowledges that his memory of things is likely inaccurate. He's not saying this happened, then this happened, then this happened. There are clear times, for example, at the carnival, right? When he first runs into Jacob at the age of 36, when he's like, got the flu and whatever, he's like, dude, I had the flu. I was high. I'm sure I'm getting this wrong, but I felt like I was floating. I don't know. It just seemed like the people parted for me. I realized they probably didn't,
Mhm.
but I'm just telling you my perspective. I like that it was very honest in that because, like a lot of the time you get first person perspective. This happened. He acknowledges that he could be perceiving things incorrectly,
Mhm.
and that it's not necessarily factual history. I also really like that he isn't shying away from telling the whole truth. And we find out at the end why he's not hiding any parts. But there's a lot of the times he's like, no, I'm just gonna tell you, it was this. I messed up here. Or, when he was at the very end of the book, he was in Maine waiting for that last call from Charles Jacobs, right? To come basically for that big storm. And he's just kind of hanging out. And he's like, I kept not hearing from him. So, I wasn't really hoping that he'd had a fourth stroke and did. Fuck that.
But
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
I was hoping he would had a fourth stroke and died. Like, I like that he tried to that thing we do where we try to protect ourselves
Mhm.
and put ourselves in the best light. He worked very hard not to do that for himself. So I appreciate that.
Fair. Yeah, and I hadn't thought about it again that deeply on it, but I do agree with you thinking back on it. He was a good narrator in the sense of gave you the truest sense of his truth, of his knowledge, of his past and everything. And so, yeah, I can agree that he's probably one of the better narrators from the first person perspective that we've had, kind of thing. Now, speaking of narrators, though, if you audiobook this, I highly, highly, highly recommend listening at least 2 times speed, because even at 1.5 speed, the narrator is atrocious in the sense of he's slow and boring and flat and monotone, and especially for the first half of the book. It picks up once we start getting into the more excitingness towards the end. It does get a little better, but oh my god, that's one reason why I struggled like at first with it, because the narrator himself did not do a good job, and I'm not trying to. He might do good on other things. I just did not enjoy this performance at the normal speed or 1.5. Going into that, the first few chapters had me feeling that this was not the book I was expecting, because I first came in, I'm like, okay, revival. My brain automatically goes to, okay, it's about. Either one of you ever watched True Detective or anything like that?
Just
That
a
show.
couple of episodes.
The first season has to do a lot with like they go into like those old Louisiana style revival tent things. That's what we see later on in the book. And I'm thinking that's what the book's going to be primarily about. And then I'm thinking the first couple chapters lull me into, oh, wait, this is a coming of age story. This is a Joyland, or this is a Doomakey. This is a very much not a Stephen King book kind of thing. It might have a little bit of creepiness twisted. And then I was once again subverted of my expectations, and we get into chapter 4, or chapter 3, with him being at the carnival and everything, and that's where we get moving. It's like, okay, here, let's see where this goes. But by the end of chapter 3, I kind of saw what was coming.
As soon as we saw the as soon as the wife and kid were dead, and he was a big electric nerd, I pretty much could have written most of what happened after that. At least major plot points. I had a pretty good idea where it was going.
Yeah, same. And the only difference was I'm glad that they took it into a different route of he just wanted to know what was on the other side, apart from exactly.
Yeah. I would
say that think that was kind of dumb though. Like, I'm sorry. You just want to know, like, how about you just like kill yourself and go see them? I know that sounds terrible. And no way does this show promote suicide. Like, please don't think that. But like, obviously you're crazy. You need some intensive therapy, because how selfish are you that you just want to go see them or find a way to, like, you just want to see if they're there or if they exist, because I don't know.
I think it just became a curiosity and wanting to prove to himself, because he became pretty atheistic about the entire thing. And I think he just wanted to use the science and technology that he had developed and understood to prove that God was fake to himself, that whole thing was a charade. And I think that's why, because if he just gives up and pulls the plug on himself, that defeats the purpose of proving that he made the right choice at the bad sermon.
Yeah. One thing I would have liked to see from Charles Jacob is not the downward spiral as much as we like, because when we see him again at the carnival or whatever, he's still very happy-go-lucky, kind of helpful. Just he's in a good place mentally. He's just working his stuff, everything. And I would have liked to seen that character still progress into the Pastor Danny, role kind of thing, but still not what we see him become as a cynical old man. I would have loved to seen that optimistic evil villain, if that makes sense. Like he still feels what he's doing. I mean, he still, of course, he thinks what he's doing is right, but he knows how he's being perceived as being a dickhead and everything like that, instead of him trying to still be a nice guy. And then at the very end, like at the very, very end, that's when you switch and you're like, oh, you're actually pure evil, kind of thing. I would have liked to see that, apart from the decline we saw in the last couple chapters of, oh, he's just a crotchety old, asshole that, wants to do what he wants to do. I would like to see him stay positive and optimistic up until the very end.
I don't know. I think he lost it the day his family died. Like, I don't think he ever recovered. I think everything from that point on was in search of this, because fuck the rest of them.
I don't know. I don't think he lost his doing good for people thing. I think he had it the whole time and was just using the means that he had to do it in a different way, because he did care about all the people as test subjects for the experiments that he was doing on them, but he did follow up. He became pretty desensitized when you see that many issues.
That is a good word.
But I think inherently he still cared, but he just knew the practicalities of, well, I have to figure this out. That's me figuring this out is more important than some of the other going out and taking care of these people after the fact. I've already given them a huge benefit. Like,
do you think he would have continued if he would have known what would have happened to all of those people after he made it through the door or opened the door?
How do you mean?
I mean, okay, right? So we see Mother, we see into the void or the null, we see into the null, and everybody is a miserable zombie or something.
Zombie ant.
Zombie,
right.
Lovecraftian ant.
Yeah, okay, so everything horrible, 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 horrible. It's all bad, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this kind of goes to one of my sub points of like, I really love that when you killed the big baddie, that actually wasn't the worst and scariest part of the book. Like, then the story kept going. So it was the other stuff. I see dead people and dead people everywhere you turn. Dead people, dead people, dead people. which I love, and we're going to talk about in a minute. But do you think if Charles Jacobs knew that that would be a possible outcome, would he have been able to stop, or would he have wanted to?
And that's kind of my point is in my scenario where he stayed the optimistic and all that, he would have stopped. He probably would have second guessed him. Where he became being the cynic, being the desensitized, he wouldn't have, because he was so hyper focused on this one goal by the end of his life, he wouldn't have cared, knowing one way or the other.
So
You know,
basically, the question is, if he would have found this out later of what the answer is, would he have gone back and didn't die at that exact moment? Would he have continued after that? Is that what we're asking?
Or if he had known that that could have been a possible outcome if he continued, that
Yeah.
there's going to be a backlash on the people who've experienced this secret electricity.
I don't know. I think it probably depends on how early on it occurs to some extent. I think what Benji is saying makes a lot of sense to me too. Of, he's so far gone towards the very end, it really didn't matter, and it was just
Mhm.
end all be all. This is gonna happen. I'm gonna find out, no matter the circumstance or the cost, and and he does find out, and it's too much for him, and I think it breaks
Yeah.
him. I mean, it does, but I think knowing that it wasn't even close to what he was hoping it would be, I think that it was pretty a pretty bad torment for him in those last few moments.
Mhm.
Yeah. And to your point, Melissa, I think the big break with the wife and son dying is more his break from God. Like that was his turning point, where he was just like, yeah, nope, that he can't, if he let this happen, he can't be real kind of thing. And that's where he dove hard into the scientific realm apart from the religious. Then he took his religious background and used it for his own profitable gain,
Mhm.
which can't blame the guy. If he got this to use, and you're tracking.
I also wonder how much of that is a commentary on like revivalists
Oh,
and
it's a
what are
huge
you
commentary
really
on
doing
that.
this for? So fun.
Yeah.
So fun because he's like, fuck them. They're all a bunch of
Hucksters.
oh, what's the Joyland word?
Rubes.
Rubes.
They're all a bunch of rubes.
Rubes and hucksters.
Rubes and hipsters, yep. And and going back to the Drillland thing, we got the going down south, and they're very, very heavily influenced. And
I'm really
I'm
glad we picked Joyland.
Yeah.
and we did. The other reason I picked the Mr. Mercedes is you have young, you have middle age, and you look fucking good. Yeah, and this was that line was
You look fucking terrific.
you look fucking terrific.
So what's great is he revises it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He
And
adds
it's
a new
like,
one.
how the fuck did I get to like this or something like
Yeah.
that? I'm like, oh yeah, nope, I get it. I just see that's what I mean. The voice of this character, the narrator, was great. I just like voice. I don't think Jamie was the most interesting person we've ever met in a Stephen King
Yeah.
book, but he was a good narrator. I enjoyed his storytelling, not necessarily him being the story, but
Mhm.
his storytelling. Other thoughts before we get into Benji's side note?
Nope.
So okay. So I got done with the book first, before anybody else in the group here. And at the spoilers, at the very end of the book, after they make it through the door, Charles Jacob technically revives somebody who just died within 15 to 30 minutes. And him and Jamie touch this person, Christina Fay,
Mary Faye.
Mary.
Mary Faye, touch her, and they
I
are
have a list.
shown. I know. I was trying to recall. I'm scrolled down, so I didn't want to go up. But they touch her, and they see into the void and everything, and it ends up basically driving Jacob's mad, and Mary Faye becomes this mother character that everything is revolved around, and Jamie ends up killing her again with a revolver, and Jacobs ends up dying. Fast forward, pretty much everybody that's been affected by Jacobs ends up committing murder and or suicide, or a good number of them, because even Jamie was like, we didn't get, I haven't checked everybody, but all the ones that I know of had this happen kind of thing. And so pretty much a lot of death, a lot of fucking death.
I see
And
dead people.
And if you remember our last episode, Melissa was saying, I'm very disappointed the bomb didn't go off. In a group of, preteen girls watching a boy band, she was like, I wanted death and carnage. And my first response was, so Melissa, enough death for you?
Yes, it was fantastic. And it was murdery and it was awful. Okay, so I made a list.
Pretty brutal in several
Yeah.
cases. It was pretty
So-
rough.
Yeah.
So I decided to keep track. So I actually read this book twice. I'm not one to necessarily make it through a book twice, but I listened to the audiobook a few weeks ago, and then in the last 3 days, I have audiobook slashed read. So like as I was driving, I would listen to the audiobook, and then as soon as I would park and have to go sit at a doctor's appointment, I would pull up my app and I'd be like, okay, I finished chapter 13 or whatever. Go to that
Mhm.
part and I read, and then I'd skip ahead in my Audible when I got back in my car. I did like 6 hours today driving places. So thank you, kids' doctor's appointments. But what I did is I kept track of everybody who died in the book. I didn't really count because there were some estimates, but
Sure.
here we go. So it started with Patsy and Maury in 1965, right? Dead,
Yes.
unrelated to secret electricity, but still dead, catalyst for kind of the crazy, if you will. Blake Gilmore was the next person who was listed as a death, which is interesting. That's not till 2008. He's the crazy glue guy who crazy glued his nostrils and his lips closed.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a good one. Then we have Kathy Morse, the Oklahomian girl from the lightning
Oh
photography
my
picture.
fucking God.
Yep, exactly. So she threw herself off of a bridge. Robert Rivard, the St. Louis boy who ended up hanging himself with a pair of jeans.
Mhm.
Franklin and Janice Faye, the only other non-secret electricity related deaths. They are the parents of Mary Faye, who died in 1985 in the car accident in Ireland that Mary was severely injured and ended up getting transfusions of mad cow diseased infected blood,
Mhm.
right? Which
So,
ended up giving
side note, really quick to that. Does anybody know the actor that was referenced? In didn't an
Oh.
actor have that very similar thing happen?
I didn't know who it was. I remember that line. I didn't know who it was.
Matthew Broderick
Oh,
actually
was it?
had a very similar incident
funny.
in Ireland. Yeah, and when he said the line, I'm like, ooh, I know that one.
That's funny. Okay. Then of course Mary Faye, who I guess technically isn't a death by secret electricity related, except she was sacrificed in the pursuit
Well, hers was
thereof.
she was just not revived. She was dying from the thing.
was
so
dying
it's
from-
DNR'd.
Right, but she did die. And while she didn't die from a secret electricity related event, she did die and was part of the secret electricity conundrum
Mhm. She was
Pursuit.
re-dead.
pursuit. Well, then she was re-dead by the gunshots.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it said dozens, possibly hundreds of suicides from 2014 to 2015. Big fan. Also, over 50 of those people took out others with them.
Mhm.
So, like, there's your numbers there. Charlie Jacobs died, right? So he died from his fourth stroke, basically, right? Astrid and Jenny.
Yeah. So
Astrid stabbed her to death.
another thought on this one, I would have liked like them to stab each other. They were both they'd both been healed, and so since Jenny like ran home to Astrid, I would have loved like the door to be open, and she had the gun and Astrid had a knife or something, and just double up.
Hold on. That
you
like
know.
the scene in Needful Things with the two women in the middle of the street who just
Yeah, something like
okay,
that.
You're right. I would have added that in. Good call. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we also had, here we go. Here are some other ones, right? Patricia Farmingdale, the girl who would try to put salt in her eyes. She also took out her father. Emil Klein, the dirt eater, killed his wife, his son, and himself. Alice Adams shot up a convenience store, killed
Yes,
3
took out-
people, and killed herself. Margaret Tremaine threw her infant son off a balcony and then jumped after him without making a sound.
Mhm.
Al Stamper, who I feel like is a name I should have recognized from the story, and I can't. place where he comes from?
He was Jacobs's assistant. He was the vocalist, the singer from the 70s, the R&B singer from the 70s who became
Oh, really?
Jacobs's
the gospel
Gospel.
singer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. I knew the name. Okay. Anyway, so I like his story a lot. He invited both of his ex-wives over.
Yeah.
The second one got caught in traffic, and when she showed up, she found the first wife like tied and strangled to a chair
With a-
and was able to
With a
escape
hammer blow to the skull.
with
Yeah.
a hammer blow to the head, was able to escape, and Al went after her but died of a heart attack whilst in pursuit.
Right.
And then probably the saddest one is Hugh and Georgia.
Yeah.
That one kind of got me in the feels, which is
Yeah.
good because the rest of them I'm like, ooh, dead person. Ooh, dead person.
I will
Oh
say
my god, they're all dying.
there are at least 2 pretty big characters that I think you don't have on your list, unless I just missed them.
So I only listed deaths. I did not list maimings and attacks. I did that on purpose.
Well, what about Jamie's sister?
Oh, you're right. Okay,
Oh,
so
and
his
mom.
mom, his sister,
the
and
mom.
his brother
Those-
Andy.
Right.
All
And the
3 of them.
brother-in-law.
And the
And techni-
dad. You're
Yeah.
right. Okay,
It
so
was
I
the
missed
family.
those.
That's
I
what I was
guess
like.
I
There's
was
a
really
handful
looking for.
there, but they're not directly related
Okay,
to.
so I missed the dead family. I
Mhm.
missed the dead family. There's Conrad, who's incapacitated, and his
Mhm.
wanker boyfriend.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm glad that one worked. Like as soon as the very first one, I'm like, okay, Connor's killing that guy or something. And then I'm like, what about Jamie? Or Jamie's gonna go and do something. Like I was like ready for it. I'm glad subverted the thing on Jamie, being the key, which okay.
Yeah, it was a little convoluted there. But, I mean, that's kind of what happens in King books, right? Like we have this
Yeah.
great story that's like, I gotta get out of it somehow. Key.
Yeah.
I'm used
Yeah.
to it.
She was the door and I'm the key. So I'm safe.
I am the key master.
I am the gatekeeper. Yeah. With those, and then also that kind of ties into my last side note, another fucking millionaire. Because of Hugh, Jamie becomes a millionaire and all this money and everything that just left him, which fine, it made sense in the story. Hugh brings up, I wish I had kids, had somebody to leave this to, and he had nothing, and Jamie was there for him and everything. Made sense, made perfect sense. But god damn it, King, not everybody's a fucking millionaire. Okay? And yes, Jamie had to go through a whole
Hold
long
on.
life.
I'm
of
going to
stuff.
stop you right there. Not everyone is a millionaire yet.
Yes.
Continue.
True. But, so we had to follow Jamie's whole life story, and then he became a millionaire, which it's fine. It's better than Lacey's story where I have the most, I'm a fucking billionaire and I didn't do shit for it, but
Oh,
yeah.
she married the author. Right. Sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
even remember that one. But okay.
But like, so we got to see his poor journey into, millionaire. But even Terry, who took over Dad's oil business, became,
And then owns everything.
Yeah, everything in town. So it's like, branch out a little bit, King, put on your work boots a little bit more. But just being a smart ass on it. But it's just,
That's fair. It does happen quite a bit that someone ends up becoming wealthy at some point in most of these books, it seems like.
Yeah. I mean, all the kids in It,
I was gonna say that's a little specific though,
Except
because
for
it was
except for Mike. Yeah,
by choice though.
true.
Sort of.
Yeah,
Sure.
in a way.
All right. Question time?
Sure.
Yeah.
Question time. I actually had like questions. I'm telling you, I did better on this book than I've done in a long time.
I actually had a question. so-
I saw that and then I didn't look at it. So I was like, I'm glad you colored it a different color. Okay, here we go. Question 1. We know that Jamie has always felt like the shadow of Jacobs over him, right? He says that a lot. He calls him my old fit business, blah, blah, blah. But Charlie also says that, their destinies are intertwined and he's very drawn to Jamie. At one point, Jamie even asks him, like, why me? And the only thing Jacob says is, well, you're my destiny. So what the fuck is that all about? What connection does Jacobs feel to Jamie?
It was not explained well enough for me. I will say it was like there could have been something really, really interesting there to like put a nail in the coffin of that comment, and it just never comes. Like it's just never
Yeah.
there.
The only thing, like, and I'm just thinking about it right now. First of all, you're my density, but the only other thing that I can think of is like Jamie was the first one to realize the trick of the Jesus. Like he kind of but no, I guess
he shows
Jacob
him.
showed him.
He just
He
tells
showed
him.
him. So it's not even I figured it out. Then I don't. Yeah, that's the reason why I'm like, oh, you're the key. You're not a. It was
It's like he just
very
picked him. He just
yeah.
they connected early on, and that was it. It was just a 22-year-old preacher comes into town,
Yeah.
falls in love with this boy, for not to be weird about it,
Right.
but like just has
Oh,
a special connection
I
to this
mean-
kid,
Yeah.
and it just was. They were always there, intertwining throughout their lives to some extent, and it was just like, why? I'm with Jamie. Like, why? Like, what's
Yeah.
Right. I mean, as a teacher, there's definitely some, I mean, I've had lots of students, right? And I care about them, but there's been a couple that I have definitely been like, yeah, that one's mine. You know, like there are just a few, there's something about their personality and the way they connect with your personality. You know, like I had a teacher connect last year really, really hard with one of our nieces who goes to one of my schools. So I could see it when the two of them were together. You could just see the connection that they had, right? But that doesn't mean that I now am trying to seek out my 20-year-old former students, or that or that it's going to be, oh, my whole life's work is dependent upon this person coming in. And no, like you were just somebody that like my personality clicked with your personality. I don't. So I get the
Yeah.
connection as a kid, but not the like lifelong. I don't know.
I would say
Yeah.
the only time it makes sense is, they do have that big 15-year gap where they don't see each other, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they reconnect in a really important.
Actually, it's more than, it was like 20.
It was 27 years.
Yeah.
Because I started doing the math because I was like,
Mhm.
it's like 27 years to 12 years it was like half. It was like almost halved each time, because then it was like 7 years and then 3 years, and then like the last one was like a 6 months or something.
Gotcha.
And it was like a weird
Okay.
like halving
But
of
either
time.
way, it was that first reconnection that was a pretty
Yeah.
important one, and Jamie became one of the earlier actively trying to heal people that he actually knows, and not just doing these magic tricks with the illusion trick. When he's working for the carnival, it's like the first time he really goes on a limb and tries it as a thing, not just
Not quite.
Well, I know Khan, and there's a little bit here and there,
Hugh.
but
Yeah.
Right.
Hugh.
it was just
Yeah.
the first time he reconnected. It just made sense. I think that's why.
I gotcha.
Oh, after all this time, it just worked out. I think it was after that he felt this destiny thing, and whatever it was. But
You know who kind of completely not off topic, but who Jacobs just reminded me of, just thinking about it, Leland Gaunt.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to do this for you, but down the line, I'm going to ask for a favor, or I'm going, he does that with Hugh, he does that with Jenny, does that with Astrid, and so it's like, it's very much that quid pro quo kind of thing. And it just hit me like the second
Mhm.
on that.
I think it's pretty fair.
I just started singing the song from Chicago, "When you're good to mama, mama's good to you." So, yep. Okay, question 2. In chapter 10, Jamie receives a letter from Jacobs. This is the one with Astrid, right? She is dying, and Jacobs is like, you're going to want to read this letter. Right before reading the letter, Jamie says he almost rips it up. Then he states that he wonders what would have been different if he had ripped up the letter. What do you think would be different?
Astrid would have been dead.
Yeah.
And they probably would not have reconnected. Or, I think he would have kept his word to himself of, I'm not going to reach out to him. I'm going to continue to ignore Jacobs for the rest of my life, kind of thing. I think he would have been able to stay away, but it's hard to say.
And honestly, yes, but I don't think Jamie's the only key. Looking at the personality type of Jacobs, he grooms, he picks his targets, and he's gotten multiples. Look at all of his servants. Look at all Al Green or whatever his name, Al Stamper. He was one of his people. Look at everybody else. So for Jamie to think I was the key, you happen to be the key that was there, and I think that might be the biggest key. Had there been any other person that had received the secret electricity, probably could have acted the same way, but it just so happened that Jacobs had this over Jamie, that he can use it to his advantage and make him come, because he had Astrid in his pocket. He had, the guilt and all that, and Jamie's curiosity, which did kick off from the time he was a kid. So that was another thing that was played up, was Jamie's just ultimate curiosity of everything.
So would Jamie be dead?
Yes.
Because he would have been one of the attempted whatevers.
He probably would have killed Rihanna on her next recording album.
I don't know.
She recorded.
I don't know that he would have been dead. No, go ahead. Continue with your.
Oh, I was just making a joke. Like, she recorded at the studio, so that's why.
But I think he was so aware of everything else that was going on. I mean, I know he had the side effects early on, and they kind of went away, and it sounded like it happened to a lot of people, and then they came back with a vengeance, not too long, within 3 years after Jacobs being dead. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if he would have been dead by that time, just because he was doing all the research into finding out what was going on with all of these other patients, is what I'll call them. And I don't know, they hit a certain level of awareness that I think could have changed the tide for him, but impossible to know.
All right. Question 3. Do you have an old fifth business?
I don't like. I guess I was never. I mean, I know it's like the first sentence in the book, but I guess it doesn't register to me of what it means. Like, somebody that just keeps coming back.
Just comes back into your life at certain times. Usually, it seems like a significant thing, but it's.
And also not necessarily in a
thing.
positive way.
Yeah, just a pivotal person that you don't keep up with necessarily, but just keeps coming back into your life at certain points.
No,
I would say I don't right now, but I mean, he didn't really have that until their second meeting, really, which you said was 27. Yeah. I mean, he's what, almost 40?
36.
Yeah, 36.
So yeah. I mean, there's time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that too. Also, I don't really like a lot of people. I also don't dislike a lot of people. I just don't connect with people. So, no.
I connect with a lot of people, and so it's just kind of like, if I see him again, okay, cool.
Exactly. It's there's nobody that stands out to me as in a negative light to that point.
Plus, who wants to say it in public on YouTube? But I figured I'd ask. I have a random fourth question. It's just like, what the fuck is secret electricity anyway? Because I sure didn't get that. It goes in my. I really tried hard to understand what the heck was going on, and then I stopped trying, and I still don't think I know what was going on. Anybody else?
There's a room in the ministry, or in the Ministry of Mysteries, that's always locked.
Department of Mysteries.
The Department of Mysteries. Thank you. That's always locked, that nobody ever enters, but it's full of a magical power that nobody can contain. So there's your answer. That's what the secret electricity is.
Answer. Done. Sold. In. Canon. What's up? All right. Benji's got his own question.
All right, I do. And it's nothing too deep, but were the murder-suicides a result of the door / Jacobs going through the door, being the door being opened and them going through the door, or was it the death of their creator, the quote unquote creator of the saving grace? Was it his death that resulted in the pandemonium, or him opening Pandora's box?
By death, you mean Jacob's death?
Yes.
So is as in, like, did they do that because he died, or because he opened the mystic portal of doom?
Exactly.
I don't know. I put that down too. I still don't understand it, and I just liked the dead people stuff.
Yeah, no, actually, this was something in one of it was like question 2 or something. I almost hit on that idea, and I just felt like it was going to come up. I don't know. You know, it could be either one of those. I think those are both completely valid, or it could have been the fact that there was just a doorway that was opened to any fashion at all that just kind of it was too much. I'd probably lean on, which doesn't really make any sense, but just feels the way the story went, that it was the death of Jacobs, that everything just tailspun after that. And it was, okay, well, now everyone's going to die. But there's like no connection to him anymore. It's just the usage of the stuff doesn't make it connected. It's not like they're tethered to him somehow. Kill the Night King and they
No.
all die, but I don't think it's like that.
So I wonder if it's not about Jacobs at all, but it's about Mother.
That's what just the
Like-
gateway and the interaction with Mother. That's
And that she pulls that string because she's mad at Jamie for saying no. She's annoyed that Jacobs has been trying to open this door. And it's kind of like the big giant like I have told you no. I have sent you messages no. Like I've told you not to do this, or and then here you did this anyway. I'll get you. And because secret electricity really is evil energy from the null, right? I'm making that up. Yeah,
No,
I'm gonna go with it. Sounds
I mean,
good.
it's a yeah.
Right.
I
So
think there's
if that's
something
it, therefore it's connected back to that, which means the null controls it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the null is mad at us.
Which is something that Jamie was saying the whole time is, should you even been doing this if you don't know what it is? Like, don't just use the tool because it's doing a thing when you don't understand how the tool is doing it. Like, it falls right into the same thing that,
Right.
you know, I can't think of his name. Jacobs was always saying, electricity is becoming so ubiquitous that no one even understands how it works. Like, he always made a point that, like, oh, people just use it. And he ends up, he kind of like rails on that when he's younger. And then he ends up doing the exact thing where he's just using it without really having any chance of understanding it. And he says, oh, it's unknowable. Well, then stop fucking doing it. Like, you see, it's a pretty big issue in the long run, but he's committed to his achieving his own goals with this access to whatever this tool is for himself.
Yeah. So my only thought on it, and Melissa, I love your point entirely, and I'm actually going with that because I do like that he antagonized Mother, and Mother just said nope and pulled it. The only thing that popped in my head with a thing about that question was the amount of electricity that he produced could have sparked that chain reaction, because it fled through him, it went through him, went through Jamie, it amplified, and that's what it did. That was where my brain kind of went, but I love the Mother aspect of it. So that's headcanon now.
Okay. My favorite thing, Benji.
Chapter 2, actually. I loved the early on coming of age style thing. Wasn't a big fan of the first chapter, just felt it was boring. I was like, okay, great. But it had nothing to do with Jacobs. It was the only chapter in the book that we didn't have a Jacobs reference really or anything. It was just Jamie, becoming a guitar player, finding Astrid, growing up. And this is before the dark times of Jamie. This is just good old Jamie having fun, being young, and it was just
dazed and confused Jamie.
Dazed and confused Jamie.
All right,
It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
That aspect of him, but I never put him at the dazed and confused side. I was more like Easy Rider, kind of just like cool, but like not even that. And actually, no, I guess Dazed and Confused is apt because like he's more the freshman in Dazed and Confused over the Matthew McConaughey. Yeah.
That's or like Freaks
So-
and Geeks, like just that feel to it.
Yes. He just has that one cool thing that he can play guitar, and so it works to his advantage. And so I really enjoyed that chapter.
I agree with that. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
one.
I agree. All right, Luke.
I really liked a lot of parts of this book. I think there's a lot of great character stuff. I think there's a ton of interesting little scenes. But the terrible sermon, I don't know. I thought that was pretty awesome. Well, just like the whole Jacob's fall from grace is what I'll call it. When he really just pulls the lever and changes the rest of the trajectory of his life. And, you know, after the funeral or seeing his kid with his face torn off in the car accident and just having him be quiet for a couple days, and then comes in and gives another sermon at, you know, church, and he just lets it rip that, you know, like, this is pretty much all bullshit. And I loved that we saw that, and it wasn't just like, oh, and he just left and then we saw him later. Like, I'm glad there was a big blow up that everyone was just like, holy shit, like, that was a thing. That was pretty messed up. And like, just knowing the time period and how sensitive parents would have been to something that sacrilegious at that time, I just felt like it was written pretty well. And like, you know, some of the dads are standing up, like, threatening to kick his ass and like telling him, you need to get the fuck out of the church right now. You need to leave. Like, this is not okay. I don't know. I just thought it was a very memorable scene for sure.
I don't have a favorite. I've been really racking my brain. You both came up with adequate answers. I appreciate them. The first time through, I didn't really like Astrid, but the second time through, I was like, no, I can appreciate like the role she kind of played in Jamie's life, and I liked seeing Jamie through the years, right? Like seeing him evolve and change as a human. But I think the thing that I liked the best, on top of like the plot and the dead people and all those things, because you know I've been waiting for it. The Mortons are a good family. The Mortons were a good family. And I don't mean a good family because they were good Christians who did the Christian thing. I mean, like, they were good humans to each other, right? The parents got along. And even when they would argue, Dad put his hands in his pockets because he knew that, like, I might get, but I'm not going to do anything, which for that time period was a big thing. They had a gay son and it was never an issue. It just, that's what it was. And we're talking parents in the 50s and 60s, and it just wasn't a thing for them. It was like fine, you know? And the way those brothers loved that sister, the fact that Andy went and kicked the ass of that husband, like, you don't mess with my sister, like, they're a good family. They're the kind of family you want your family to be, and the kind of family I think we have too. But it's very rare to have a good family at the center of a book, even though bad things happen to them, which is kind of, I think, you know, Charles Jacobs' point is that here's good people and look at how many died and were unnecessary, whatever. But I do think their family dynamic is one of my favorite things that we haven't talked about yet, at least.
Fair. Completely agree.
Okay, guys, I'm going to try sharing my screen since I'm on a different computer.
Oh man. Okay. Just if you're watching live, be prepared. It might kill everything. We'll see how it goes.
Okay, are you ready?
Sure.
How did it go?
So far, okay. All right, good. It did go full screen, which is what messed up last time, but it looks like it's still working. So we're good.
Okay. All right. So this is the part that we all hate, where we look at the list, which is an ongoing thing, which is never great. But here we go. We're going to try it. Oh, by the way, totally popped up on my YouTube video. Like, hey, look, we're on there. We still have video. Good job, us. So we have to decide where in this list we think this should go. I'm going to put a random number in. I'm kind of guessing at the moment. I'm not confident in my number at all. Do you guys have numbers in?
No,
I got mine in. I got mine in.
I just. Oh, no.
You want to talk through your thinking before you put in a number? I'll allow it.
I'll just hit enter when you tell me to. I'm good.
All right. Do you have a number in there, or you're just entering 0?
I'm just saying NA. I'm not doing it anymore.
I abstain.
I abstain. Conscientious
That is not allowed.
objector. Conscientious
Present.
objector.
Present vote.
All right. 3, 2.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, enter.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So I put 10. Luke and Benji both put 15. That gives us an average of like 13. So it ends up 13th, just above Lisi's
Not gonna
story,
lie, that's actually
which is
exactly
honestly
where
right where
I
I wanted it.
Same. I was
exactly-
gonna put that. I
This
was
is
gonna
the
put
first time
13.
all three of us
I
are
was
so
gonna-
happy.
I was gonna put 13 also, and I was like, but like I did like it better than Gerald's game, so I'll put it
Same.
above Gerald's game, but I really don't like it better than it.
That's exactly
Doom
where I
McKee.
was.
You know, like I liked Doom McKee better than this personally.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would agree with
You know,
that.
And
I didn't, but that's okay.
fair. But
But-
yeah, no, because
That's hilarious.
because I was shooting. Yeah, we were all shooting for 13, which because it is better than Lisi's story. I
and
will
then I
stand by
struggled
that.
with.
That's
I don't know. The Shining. That was where I was with it. I was like, if it's not going to
Yeah.
be 13, I gotta shoot lower than The Shining. This is where I was, and man, that's the
Yeah.
first time we've all just
Well,
been like, yep, that
hon-
feels good. That really feels
in all
good.
reality, Luke, I was playing the game. I kind of thought you would put it at like 8 or 9, and so I was trying to drop it. Like I actually had 13 in, but I'm like, I'm gonna drop it just a couple lower to negate other
Mhm.
votes that I think will be coming in. So okay, well, all right, that's
Man.
funny.
I think this is the
That is
most
the most
accurate.
perfect score we've ever given. That's
Besides
not true.
Dolores Claiborne
Carrie is in the right spot.
and Carrie, I'd say
And
those are
Carrie.
those are our best 3.
I disagree. I disagree on Carrie.
Okay.
I think
No, it's
1122.
not that good of a book.
It's not. It's better than a few others.
Yes,
It's-
it's Cemetery.
And Girl Love Tom Gordon, Salem's Lot, and Cell, and
No,
Insomnia.
not Salem's Lot.
Fine.
Maybe
Fine.
Insomnia. Maybe Insomnia.
Cell.
I'll-
Either way.
absolutely.
I will
Either way.
trade you.
13's a good one
Okay.
for this.
13's a
book.
good one. Yeah. Anyway.
Yay
so,
us.
cheers.
Ooh, shocking. And we still thought about it. Final thoughts. I don't know.
Final thoughts on my end. If you're gonna read this book, read it. Listen to it in your own head. I again cannot I do not recommend this narrator at all. I was not impressed. What he put me to sleep, and I was working while I was listening to it, and that's not a good thing to do. And so, yeah, I'm sorry. He might have other good work, but if you're gonna read it. Don't go with the audiobook on it. Not a bad story.
Good narrator. If you want a good first person story and a good like lifelong story, good. If you like what's considered classic King, and I would say we've missed a lot of classic King, like Dead Zone and Firestarter and stuff like that. I think this fits better with what hardcore Stephen King readers call Stephen King.
Yeah.
I
I can see that.
think that's why I enjoyed it so much, because I was like, yes, creepy stuff. Yes, dead people. Yeah, like all the things that creep me out when it comes to Stephen King, but I expect from him. It's not that I like the dead people. I was afraid he was getting soft in his old age. And this book proves, nope, he's still got it. Good. I'm back into like, I got to pull out, some of these other ones. So,
Yeah.
But I would say like, it's not as great as Misery, Dolores Claiborne. Just some of the like, The Stand, which I haven't gotten to yet, but Luke, final thoughts?
I think this book is definitely worth reading. I think it's worth checking out, and it's a lot of enjoyable things in the story. There's interesting things going on. I do think it does a really good job pulling back to the dedication of hearkening some of those classic horror story authors and even referencing them here and there, talking about H.P. Lovecraft. And there's a couple different places in there where it's like, okay, obviously this is Frankenstein-esque and other things too. But I got that feel multiple times. Anytime the mad scientist came in, I thought it was well done with a bit more updated, polished version of it. So it had a classic feel with a modern swing, and I thought it nailed it for what it was going for with that type of villain, is what I'll call him. And it's worth checking out. And the audiobook narrator didn't bother me that much. Do you know who it is?
I heard the name at the end
It
of
is
it, and
David Morse, who was Brutus Howard in The Green Mile. And he is in
oh,
Hurt
okay,
Locker and
Yep.
12 Monkeys and
just
I
okay.
didn't have a problem with the narrator at all. That didn't
only
bother me,
when it
but-
was the child's voice, I think was
That
questionable.
was the main issue.
But I thought he did a good job with several of the other characters. The adult Jamie voice was great. I mean, I thought it fit the ages that he was growing up, and I thought what he did with Jacobs was solid too. You know, as he was becoming more decrepit and having his strokes, and he started slurring his speech and struggling through it. I thought he sold it well enough for me, at least. There are other audiobook narrators that probably would do a better job, but it didn't bother me any.
Fair. And I will say, listening 2 times through on my second read through, way better at a faster pace.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. With that said, make sure you're following us on all the social medias at Floats Down Here on Twitter and Instagram, because you know all that shit starts in E. Send your emails to floatsdownhere@gmail.com. Make sure you're finding us on the podcastthat.com for all of our shows. Make sure you subscribe and rate us on iTunes and on YouTube under Drawbridge Media.
This show and all of our shows at thepodcastthat.com are produced with the love and support of our wonderful, truly amazing Imaginary Legion patrons. You can learn more about our reward tiers at patreon.com/stayimaginary.
Join us in September when we go to Finders Keepers. Head back to Bill Hodges and his hodgepodge of detective friends. And we start to investigate the murder of a reclusive author.
Oh, I'm excited
You'll
for
float
that.
too.
I'm excited for that. Stay imaginary.
Same.
Thanks.
The podcast that floats down here.
Hi, I'm Melissa, your Stephen King veteran.
Hi, I'm Ben, the Stephen King and horror film fanboy.
And hello, I'm Luke, your first-time Stephen King reader.